республик свободных сплотила навеки Великая Русь. Да здравствует созданный волей народ. Sorry, maybe this is the wrong one.
I was surprised that one playing at Trump's inauguration.
Oh God.
Can we have the sound back? Is that not working? I know the rest of the words that's almost done. Where's the sound? Dominic, we need sound.
Oh God.
Dominic Mendiola.
Dominic!
Uh-oh.
Dominic!
Oh my goodness.
Oh, look.
It was all my fault. I'm so sorry, Dominic. I love you. I'm sorry. You'd think I grew up with a dad who's a professional musician and I still don't know how to keep the mic on. So, here in the United States, so often the Russians are the enemy. Right? Everyone knew this song and everybody was laughing. You know, and this is the Cold War, it was the USSR, now it's the Russians meddling in the elections. But what about the regular people? Not the Russian government, but the regular people who don't have a choice most of the time in this government. What about them? And I want to tell you about one of these people. And this is a girl, and her name is Asa. And back in the late 1980s, she was an elementary school student, and she lived in Moscow, which was then the former Soviet Union. She had a pretty comfortable life, although I guess as a kid she didn't really know it or appreciate it. But she lived in a nice, comfortable, modest apartment in a high-rise building. I mean, it was taller than the one that's behind you. She really loved looking out the windows. There were big windows, and she loved checking out all the buildings. She could see really far. There was a hospital where her little sister was born, and there was a post office, and there were lots of birds on the roof. And sometimes she gave them names out of boredom. And she went to school just like I guess kids over most of the world do. I hope they do. There was a uniform in the Soviet Union, so every morning she put that on. And she'd walk past a couple of buildings and the post office to school. If it was really cold, her mom made her wear a ton of layers. And at that point, they had like a little wardrobe. So if you can imagine, the winters in Moscow were very cold. So there was a special little rooms for kids to put in all their clothes. And another thing that she experienced a few times throughout the year were drills in case of a nuclear attack. Asa and her little classmates in elementary school went into little rooms in the basement, and they practiced putting on little gas masks. They smelled like rubber, and they pulled her hair. So she lived with her mom and dad, with her little sister. She had some extended family around Moscow. It's a big city, but at least once a month, the family would go out and see maybe a grandparent or cousins. She also had some uncles who lived out of town in a different city. She really loved it when they came to visit because they would crash with the family. And it was her job to set up that folding camping bed. She pulled that out so fast, and she was so proud of her little skills that she could set that all up and make her relatives feel welcome. So now we fast forward to the early 1990s. And our friend Asa is in middle school. And one day, her parents tell her, we're moving to America, and we're never coming back. For a few weeks, she watched her mom pack all the family belongings into giant shapeless bags, almost as big as she was. Her mom was trying to decide what's essential and what's not, because they could only take a couple bags. And during this time, her father was selling valuables and furniture so that he can pay for the ticket. And then finally, one late evening in January '92, the family went to the airport, the Sheremetyevo in Moscow, hugged the relatives goodbye, and crossed the checkpoint. Now, Asa was 12, but she knew we were not coming back. So she arrived, she was in 7th grade, and things, as you can imagine, were a lot of changes. And that little girl, Asa, that was me. That was me. And my first change was that my name was changed because nobody could say Asa, A-S-Y-A. You tried Asa. Yeah, okay. You guys did so much better than my 7th grade teacher because after a couple of months, I'm like, Mom, nobody's like Ajda. And she's like, okay, listen, your first name is Agnes, so just cut off the S-A, Agnes, it's like Agnes. It's an American name, right? She didn't realize that it's like what like 100-year-old lady was called. But that's why my name is Agnes. And Agnesa was actually my grandmother who died before I was born. So it's a family name. And my sister's Inessa. We have the same name. We just figured that out a couple years ago.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, there were a lot of changes. My first one is that I had to change my name. And then I had to go to school. There was no uniform in school. And my mom just gave me the best advice she could. She's just like, well, just pick an outfit and wear it every day. And after a couple of weeks, a girl at recess, she came over to me and she whispered, she's like, aren't you embarrassed to wear the same thing every day? You know, when you're 12 years old, that's what you really want to hear. So I went back home and I told my mom, and I went through the bag of donated clothes so that I could have like one outfit per day for like the 5 days of the week. You know, I no longer walked to school. I learned how to take the yellow school bus that went through a whole bunch of unfamiliar neighborhoods. It was a big adjustment. So at home, I mean, the apartment was nice, but we had all this furniture that was just kind of from the curb, and like not that much furniture to begin with. Instead of living in a tall building, we were now in this like private house. It was kind of weird to live in a private house. And my family didn't have a lot of money because whatever my dad sold, you know, it barely covered our plane tickets. My parents still talk about how our shopping trip for a family of 4 in '92 was just $30 per week. And his friends would make fun of him that for every 4 quarters he's like, oh, I can buy a pack of hot dogs or I can get on the bus or something, right? And he loves fishing, so in the summer he would catch fish and would like actually eat it so we didn't have to buy as much food. We didn't know that in Brooklyn and Coney Island where we lived that like it's not the healthiest place for fish to live.
Oh,
but we all survived, thankfully. And while I have my immediate family, let's just be honest, the rest of my relatives, they were in other continents. They were an ocean away, so it was just out of the question. And it was just out of the question to see them, forget monthly, forget yearly. And just when I needed them most to help me through all these transitions and through all these difficulties, they were not there. It was too expensive to call, so I could just like write a letter, I guess. Like, it's not like a hug. There was no video, there was no Skype, and we barely had any money. And that was one of the most difficult times of my life. Many times I would cry myself to sleep. I just didn't know why this was happening. Why did my parents take away my life and bring me over here into all these difficulties? And this is something that I would hold. This is a little bear toy. Even though I had fluffy stuffed animals, this is the toy that I had since I was little. And I would put it next to my bed, next to my pillow, like when I was a little kid. And I was crying myself to sleep, and it was a reminder of my childhood that was gone really quickly. It was time to grow up, but this was not the easiest way to grow up. Why did this happen? Why did my parents do this? Why did they come? Well, I mean, I knew that it was like, you know, it's for the better of the children, you know, and I could tell that they were really having a hard time, and they were really struggling. It was scary for me to see, you know, when your parents don't know what to do. When you overhear them talking about how much it's going to take, how much money it's going to cost for my mom to go get her diabetes medication. Because she brought as much as she could from Russia and now she ran out. And how much in cash would it cost because we didn't have Medicaid or any insurance for years. So I didn't want to like bring my problems to my parents because they already had a lot, and I felt like I needed to just like do my best and do well in school because they brought me to America. But why did they do it? You know, was it just like so we can have more consumer goods and like nicer apartments? And as I started to get older, gradually, I started to have courage to ask my parents, why did you do this? You know, like actually, why did you come? You know, did you realize like what a giant pain this has been and what a hardship this has been to our family? Like what was so bad? And they started telling me. That, you know, now that you're an adult and that we're not sheltering you from some of the hardships because you're a little kid, let us tell you some of these things. The first of all, there was the anti-Semitism. Widely practiced and accepted across all levels of government and society. You're just lucky you were just 12, you didn't get to experience much of it. Now, how would you like to not be able to get accepted to a university of your choice? or to be passed over for promotion to the executive level just because you're Jewish, or just because you're Christian, or just because you're Asian, or just because you're some ethnicity. And while I did have the benefit of kind of looking just like many other kids, in my birth certificate it said that I'm Jewish. And all the official government documents it said that I'm Jewish. There was no way to get away from your religion, your ethnicity in the former Soviet Union. It was in your passport. Doesn't matter what your name was, doesn't matter if you didn't look Jewish. You just didn't have some opportunities. And my mother said, you know, when I was little, my dad had to explain to me what's a kike. And I was like, why? I don't want to have to explain that to my children. I don't want to tell my children what's a kike. And I wanted them to grow up in a different society. Well, what else? Apparently the list kept growing. I mean, I wasn't as surprised by the anti-Semitism, but the list was, I had to write it down, that's how long it was actually. Then they started going on about the elections. They're like, there was just one party, you had no choice, there was one person on the ballot, and you had to vote. There was government pressure and social pressure to vote. If you were not at the polling place, people would come to your house with a ballot box. It was just one person. But you were forced to show your support for the regime in the Soviet Union. They're like, what's that? You have no choice. What is that like? You know, you can't choose how your society runs, whether you dislike it. You're frustrated. And you have to keep up this charade. That's what the Soviet Union was like. Freedom of the press, you could just forget about that. The Soviet Union, you couldn't trust the papers, you couldn't trust the TV. Most of it was owned by the government. There was a lot of censorship. And there was this joke that I kind of forgot about it, but my parents reminded me about it. Here you go. I'm going to translate it from Russian. So here's something you need to know to get this joke. Like here in the United States, a lot of papers are named Times or Post, right? You know what I'm talking about? Very good. In the Soviet Union, a lot of papers were named Pravda, which means truth. Pravda this, Pravda that. So here's the joke. Here's how it goes. So a dad calls over his little son. He's like, he takes out a pocket full of change and he's like, here son, do you mind going downstairs, walking to the kiosk and buying newspapers for the family? You can get the Pravda for me and the kids Pravda for yourself, and for your mom you get the Sunday Pravda, okay? And the kid's like, oh, you remember mom hates the Sunday Pravda. Well, little guy, in that case you can tell your mom when she goes to the bathroom, she can wipe with a television. Now, even though I was young, I remember that there were shortages of consumer goods and people did use newspapers as toilet paper sometimes, like my grandfather did, and it was a thing. But that's really how people felt about the news. They couldn't trust it. Then there was the corruption. The corruption was so pervasive that it not only didn't make the news because the news were censored, but it was just so obvious. Like if there was no corruption, it's like, how do you get anything done? How do you get anything done without bribing anyone? It's just weird. It was just weird. Like if you can afford to bribe somebody, you do, or else you just don't get far in life. Like it's not like here in the United States, like you're afraid to breaking the law because the penalties are so harsh. And there it was like, what rules? The rules are awful. If you can afford them, you break them. So take the example of housing in Moscow, the city where I'm from. After World War II ended in 1945, there was a massive housing shortage. Families didn't have places to live. Families would live in dorms. There were a lot of communal apartments. Anybody know what communal apartments are? Raise your hand. Yeah? It's kind of like when the government is distributing apartments.
It's like when they distribute luxury apartments and then they make every single bedroom a family to live in.
Thank you. Every single bedroom family. So you have a 4-bedroom house, a 4-bedroom apartment, and there are 4 families. Each family, no matter 2, 3, 4 people, gets a little room. And then the 4 burners on the stove, each of them gets a burner.
And so everybody has to share the bathroom, and every bar soap is for each family.
All the shared parts of the apartment, everyone has to share, whether or not you like your neighbors or not. And everyone has a private door lock. So a lot of tens of thousands of people live like that. So gradually they started building more apartments. Thank you very much. And they started gradually giving out apartments, and of course everything was centralized. And there was a line, your name's on the list. When they get to your list, you get the new apartment that's built. And how long did it take? Anybody want to guess how long did it take to get an apartment like that? How many years?
10.
At least 10 years, maybe 20. But if you talk to the right government official and you have an envelope with cash, at least 3 or 6 months worth of salary cash. And we have a nice conversation with them behind closed doors. Man, it's going to be less than a year. You're going to be on that list fast. And I learned that's why my family was living in that nice apartment high up in the high rise. Because my dad kind of figured it out. And he's like, well, I don't want my family to live in this tiny place in a communal apartment. And so we had that nice apartment. The building was like less than 10 years old. Everything was nice. I didn't know, right? So that's why, apparently, all these hardships occurred. And so now, why did my parents leave? Because many people stayed, right? When my parents were like, the Soviet Union has been around so long, and now it's falling apart. And I'm like, well, it was like the end of the Soviet Union. Maybe it could have been better. Why didn't you hope like some of our relatives stayed? And my parents were like, are you kidding me? It's gonna take forever. We don't have time for you and your little sister to grow up in this place. We want better opportunities for you, and we just don't trust that things are gonna change that fast. This is not a society where we want you to live. So what happened? Now it's 2017. It's been 25 years. 25 years this past January. So what's been happening in Russia? Let's see. Well, first in the 90s, how did my parents' predictions come through, right? For all of this, kind of stuff that my family went through. First there was freedom and democracy, and there was free press in the 90s. There was Boris Yeltsin. And people criticized the government, and things were good. But in 2000, Putin came to power. And the country started to slide back into authoritarianism. So it lasted less than 10 years. And where did everything go? What about the elections? There are now multiple parties in Russia, but there's only one party that actually has the hold on power. As you know, Putin and Medvedev, they were taking turns to deal with the term limits. So Putin would get elected, then Medvedev would get elected, now Putin's in power. And there are people who were like, that's all they know, like teenagers, like the millennials in Russia. That's all they know. They only know one party. And it's not just at the federal level. All levels of government, the provinces, the cities, it's just one party in charge. In all the parliaments. So, it's really not that kind of choice. You don't have that kind of choice. You can vote for people, but they're not really going to get elected. And part of that is because of the elections that often get rigged. Ballots get stuffed. Then there are protests sometimes. Sometimes people get arrested. Sometimes people get killed. The protest leaders, they get jailed. I have relatives, they weren't jailed yet, thankfully, but they've been in these protests. So when we talk about the Russians, those Russians, let's remember there are many, many Russians who are very unhappy with the situation. They're frustrated, and they take to the streets just like we do. There are many people over there that are very unhappy with how things are going, and they're doing their best. But the freedom of speech is not really there the same way like it is for us. We are free to assemble here. I don't know if we have counter-protester companions here. I don't know if they're here, but everyone has freedom of speech. It's not the same in Russia. Have you guys heard about the Pussy Riot?
Yes.
So these are like a few young women, and they got a punk rock band, and they were singing protest songs, protesting the government. You know what they have to do?
Cover their faces with neon masks.
They have to do this to protest the government, to make sure they don't get caught and hide their identity. Let us say thank you that we still have that right here in the country, for now at least. Thank you, America, for the freedom of speech. We don't have to wear this, we can wear pink hats, we can wear red, white, and blue, we can make America great again, we can do whatever we want. They're wearing these masks, but a couple of the girls, the young women, still got arrested after one of the especially high-profile pranks. And the 3 women were sentenced to 2 years in prison. 2 years in prison for singing basically like a mean song about the government. You know how many people would be in jail in the United States?
Oh my God.
If that happened for every protest? Where was I? The list is so long I have to keep finding what I'm talking about. Well, we already heard about corruption. Andy talked about corruption here, And corruption still continues over there. It's like nothing new. And anyway, where were we? So 25 years later, my parents were essentially right. It's kind of like outcome bias. You don't know what happens. But, they made a prediction that was mostly accurate. They brought their kids here. I had the privilege of growing up in the United States, and with all the hardships that we faced and that we overcame, and I'll be the first to say I'm in treatment for an anxiety disorder that started 25 years ago and took hold during all those hardships. And it's going to take me therapy maybe for the rest of my life, but I have the privilege to have access to healthcare for now and to mental health care for now. We'll see what happens. I had the privilege to grow up here. But what is the America? They brought their kids to America. They sacrificed. They stepped into the unknown. My mom and dad, thank you. What's the America that they live in now, 25 years? What's happening with the elections? Russian influence in the elections. We just heard all about that. How nice is that, huh? They want to have free elections, and there's all this stuff happening here. What about anti-Semitism? Steve Bannon is in the White House. Stephen Bannon, one of the heroes of the alt-right white supremacist movement, is in the White House. Enough said. My friend Dan Epstein is running for Congress in West Texas. And one day he came to work to see that the Democratic Party headquarters had Nazi symbols spray painted all over the office. And Epstein, so he's Jewish. And so he's like, great. You know, that's just great. Intimidation of the media. I mean, we still have freedom of the press. We don't have government-owned media. But where is this all heading? What direction is this heading? Our president, Donald Trump, keeps calling the media fake for talking about the Russia investigation. Like, I'm sorry, like the Congress is investigating Russia. They're just reporting the news. But he's saying it's a hoax. So he's just blatantly like dismissing the media. And then my favorite, here's my favorite. Do you know about that interview? I don't remember what station, network it was in. But a journalist asked Trump, you know, what do you think about all these journalists getting killed in Russia? Because journalists get killed for investigating corruption. And he said, here's what Donald Trump said. Now, plenty of people get killed here too. Is that how we want our president to talk? Is this why my family sacrificed to come here? No. Talk about unfair elections. Not only is there meddling, but now there are lies being promoted that 3 million people voted illegally. No such thing happened. This is a lie. It is just not a fact. It is a lie. But the more it gets repeated, and if there are committees formed, there are going to be millions of people who lose their right to vote. And most likely disenfranchised folks. And that is just, I can't believe it. Like, it makes my skin crawl. And, I mean, Trump just fired Comey because of this investigation. I mean, come on. If that is not corruption, I don't know what is. And while we still live officially in a democracy, and truth be told, it's not easy. It's not at a drop of a hat that we go from a democracy to an authoritarian regime. But there's reason for concern. Because not only does Trump say, oh, people get killed here too, he says, Putin is a strong leader. Oh, really? He's a strong leader for putting people in jail for speaking their mind. Okay, great. That's nice. So now, 25 years later, I'm in my late 30s. My parents were my age when they decided to bring their family here. They made the hardest decision of their life. They faced so many hardships, perhaps more than they ever imagined that they would. And they got what they wanted. And they left. They chose to restart their life because they just didn't think that things would get better. They just didn't trust it. They couldn't tell the future, but they're like, we don't think it's happening here in this country. And now we're here in the United States, today, June 3rd, 2017. What's our outlook? I personally have a lot of faith in our institutions here. And I don't think it's going to be so easy to take away our rights and for this country to fall apart. But it's not a guaranteed. The way things are going, we cannot count on it if we don't do something about it. This is why I was part of the team that helped put together the Pro-Truth Pledge. And this is going to be something, we're starting a pro-truth movement. Because when we cannot agree on the facts, you know, in the boring good old days, when like everyone accepted certain facts, and we would just like debate the nuances, like, well, I think this is why, and you know, would argue, would have like, you know, I want to go back to the good old days. We cannot even agree on the facts that the earth is warming, that there was not election fraud. Come on. So the Pro-Truth Pledge is how we're going to do this. There are people over here, and I encourage each and every one of you to sign your name. And here's what the Pro-Truth Pledge says. It basically says, you know, like, I support the facts, I'm not going to lie. Like, if I learn new information, then I'm just going to fact check it. You know, I recycle, Yeah, I turn off my water when I brush my teeth, and I'm going to fact check. If I learn that something's not true, I'm going to just say, that was true, and I'm going to amend my Facebook post or my Twitter. I'm like, I'm sorry, that was wrong. And we're going to celebrate the people who change their mind. It's not like flip-flopping is bad. It's a strength to show that you can think and change your mind. That's all it is. So the Pro-Truth Pledge is what I am doing to make sure that my family's sacrifice was not in vain. And I encourage all of you to sign the pledge. Sign the pledge. Sign the pledge. Sign the pledge. Sign the pledge.
Sign the pledge.
And I'll leave you with this little tidbit. I learned about this author. His name is Timothy Snyder, and he wrote a book called Tyranny. It just came out a couple months ago, and he basically looked at historical examples of how governments went from democracies to like fascism, Nazism, to like authoritarian regimes, like what happened. And he says there are a lot of reasons to be concerned for the United States. And one of the takeaways from the book is when truth ends, authoritarianism begins. So let's protect the truth and sign the pledge. Thank you very much.